everybody. There's only one guy who does the most mediocre impression of me. He fails like a dog. You know who I'm talking about, right? Who is it?
You know, Donald, we could have been great friends.
Why do you say that?
If you had just changed your course 1 degree.
I think you're a dog.
All you needed was a slight change.
Alec, you were so mean to me on the show. The way you portrayed me, it was so unfair, and Stormy Daniels knows it. China, thank you very much.
Not wait to see the look on those Mexicans' faces when you make them pay for that wall. They say it's going to cost $25 billion.
Fantastic, Pedro. Thank you very much. $25 billion, it can't be that much. Oh, God. Oh, God, don't worry, Donald. It'll be okay. Hillary's still ahead in the polls.
Mr. Trump?
Alec Baldwin, is he going to get arrested?
I don't know. Look, he's been trouble from day one. He did the imitation of me for years. I thought he was terrible.
Imitate him.
Well, no, I thought it was just...
Alec Baldwin wanted nothing to do with it. When Saturday Night Live called and asked him to play Donald Trump, his first reaction was a hard no. Not because he liked Trump, far from it, but because the idea of imitating him just sounded exhausting. The mannerisms, the voice, the endless exaggerations, it felt like too much. But then something shifted. His friends urged him on, the challenge intrigued him, and let's be real, the comedy was just too good to pass up. So he stepped onto that stage, threw on the wig, puckered his lips, and within seconds, it was over. Baldwin had cracked the Trump code.
Unfair. Why don't I get to make a closing statement first? After all, I am the pres...
Sorry, but I think we all needed a break. Isn't that satisfying? Just not to hear his voice for a single goddamn second.
Here's where things got wild. Trump hated it. Not just mild annoyance, not just eye-rolling frustration, full-blown rage. The more Baldwin exaggerated the pout, the flailing hands, the nonsensical rants, the angrier Trump became. He took to Twitter, calling SNL unwatchable, slamming Baldwin's talent, and demanding the show be canceled. But here's the thing. Every insult, every furious tweet, every meltdown only made the impression bigger. Instead of shutting Baldwin down, Trump's outrage turned the impersonation into a cultural phenomenon. What started as a simple comedy sketch morphed into something bigger, a piece of political history that had the power to rattle the most powerful man in the country. But how did Baldwin get it so right? How did he go from flat out rejecting the role to becoming the guy who defined Trump on late night TV? That's where the real story begins. When SNL first approached him, Baldwin didn't just hesitate, he flat out refused. Not because he supported Trump, far from it, but because he believed great impressions came from a place of admiration. And let's be honest, there was nothing about Trump Baldwin admired.
Testing. Gina. Huge Gina.
Okay, that was Republican nominee Donald Trump joining us now to discuss more on this.
Now, let me tell you something, okay?
What is that?
I wish that I was...
Mimicking someone like Trump? It sounded miserable. A non-stop headache. The voice, the strange pauses, the way he'd ramble in circles and somehow never reach a point. It all felt exhausting to replicate. Baldwin wanted nothing to do with it. The idea of stepping into that mindset week after week? No thanks. But then came the pressure. Saturday Night Live mastermind Lorne Michaels, comedy genius Tina Fey. Both convinced Baldwin was the guy. They pushed, they pleaded, they wore him down. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just another gig. Maybe there was something bigger here. And then the moment came. Baldwin finally caved. One dress rehearsal, one test run in front of the SNL crew, and boom, everything clicked. The stiff, exaggerated hand movements, the pursed lips, the way Trump stretched for words that never quite landed. It wasn't just funny, it was spot on. What started as pure hesitation turned into comedy gold. Baldwin had cracked the code. What he didn't realize? He was about to make history.
That wouldn't be hard. I thought he did terrible. I thought he was terrible at it. They have other people that do much better, but He's always
Becoming Donald Trump wasn't just about slapping on a wig and pouting. Alec Baldwin had to completely transform. It all started in the makeup chair, where a team of artists worked like mad scientists to turn him into a walking, talking Cheeto. Layers of orange foundation, just the right shade of fake tan, and a wig so perfectly ridiculous it could have had its own fan club. But looking like Trump was the easy part. The real challenge? The voice. Trump doesn't just talk, he rambles. He reaches for bigger, better words and never quite gets there. Baldwin broke down that bizarre rhythm, the awkward pauses, the dramatic emphasis on the wrong words. He pursed his lips, squinted like he was always staring into the sun, and forced his mouth into that signature pout. Every smirk, every exaggerated hand movement, it all had to be dead on. And when he finally stepped in front of the cameras, one thing was clear. Baldwin hadn't just impersonated Trump, he had become him.
Wears the biggest mask I've ever seen, and he's standing like 200 feet away from everybody. Oh.
Look, man, I'm a nice guy, but if you give me any more guff tonight, I'll rip your face off like a mad chimp. I'll knock that thing off your head and burn it. Bury it in the pet cemetery where it came from. Stop it, Joe, stop it!
And then came the hardest part. Thinking like Trump, Baldwin had to make complete nonsense sound powerful, like every rambling off-the-rails statement was somehow the most important thing ever said. That's what made it hilarious. It wasn't just an impression, it was a parody so spot on it felt almost too real. Baldwin didn't just mimic Trump, he decoded him. And once he cracked the formula, there was no stopping him. From the moment Baldwin's Trump hit the air, the real Trump lost it. He raged, he ranted, he called SNL unwatchable, and Baldwin's performance terrible. At 2 a.m., he'd be furiously tweeting about how unfair it was. But here's the funniest part. Every meltdown, every insult, every caps lock tweet just made the impression bigger. Trump's outrage turned into free advertising. More people tuned in just to see what had him so worked up. Instead of killing the bit, he accidentally made it must-watch TV. And Baldwin, he only doubled down.
Tell everybody there's only one guy that does the most mediocre impression of me. He fails like a dog. You know who I'm talking about, right? Who is it?
You know, Donald, we could have been great friends.
Why do you say that?
If you had just changed your course 1 degree.
I think you're a dog.
All you needed was a slight change.
Alec, you were so mean to me on the show. The way you portrayed me, it was so unfair. And Stormy Daniels knows it. Alec Baldwin. Well, Alec, let me tell you, the way you look at me, it makes me sick. And you're a nasty guy, and you should be ashamed of that. What do you say to that?
I say, you came, you left, now you're never coming back. God bless America.
China. Thank you very much.
Each week, Baldwin's Trump got bigger, wilder, and somehow even more accurate. He didn't have to invent anything. Trump's own speeches handed him the material on a silver platter. All Baldwin had to do was tweak a few words, stretch the pauses, crank up the confidence, and suddenly it was hilarious. The reaction completely split. Some people called it comedic genius, the best political satire in years. Others, especially Trump's biggest fans, were furious, calling it biased, fake news, disrespectful. But whether you loved it or hated it, you couldn't ignore it. And every time Trump threw a tantrum about it, Baldwin's impression only got bigger. What started as just a comedy sketch quickly became something more. Baldwin wasn't just poking fun at Trump's voice or mannerisms. He was exposing the absurdity of his entire presidency. The bit got so big that Baldwin himself became part of the political conversation. Interviews stopped being about his movies and started focusing on Trump. People weren't just asking him about his acting. They wanted his take on policies, scandals, tweets. He even wrote a book as Trump, turning a simple Saturday Night Live impression into a full-blown cultural phenomenon.
Thank you all for joining us today for this important discussion. It's in no way a publicity stunt. This is a serious, private conversation between 3 friends, plus 50 reporters with cameras. I'm proud to welcome Kanye West, Yeezus, Yandi, Yadam, Yosain. An amazing guy. Thank you for coming, Kanye.
Yeah, that's right. I flew here using the power of this hat.
That's terrific. We've also got Hall of Fame running back and civil rights advocate Jim Brown. Many people know he was a great lacrosse player. How are you feeling, Jim?
Already pretty nervous.
Then came the strangest part. Reality and parody started to merge. People who watched SNL every week found themselves hearing Baldwin's voice whenever Trump spoke. His exaggerated gestures, the rambling, the pout, it all became so spot on that it messed with people's perception. Was Baldwin making fun of Trump, or was Trump actually just that ridiculous? Some people thought it was hysterical, others were outraged, but one thing was certain: Baldwin's Trump wasn't just a joke anymore. It had become one of the most iconic images of the entire presidency. At first, Baldwin was loving it. The laughs, the attention, the cultural impact. It all felt like a huge win, but then something shifted. What was supposed to be a short-term gig turned into a never-ending performance. Every single week, he had to step into the wig, the makeup, the voice. And suddenly, Baldwin wasn't just playing Trump, he was becoming him. And that started to feel exhausting.
He says climate change is a hoax invented by China.
It's pronounced China.
Do you feel you're modeling appropriate and positive behavior for today's youth?
No, next.
So you don't care about the kids?
Anderson, I love kids, okay? I love them so much.
The pressure was non-stop. Baldwin had to stay on top of every speech, every scandal, every bizarre Trump moment. What started as comedy now felt like an obligation, and it was draining. He admitted the role weighed on him, like he was carrying something heavy that he couldn't set down. But the real toll? The backlash. Trump's supporters were livid. Hate messages poured in. Some even sent threats. Baldwin had been in Hollywood for decades, but nothing had ever triggered this level of rage and obsession. He thought about walking away more than once. But then, like clockwork, Trump would say something so outrageous that Baldwin knew, whether he liked it or not, he had to put the wig back on. He wasn't just playing a role anymore. He was part of the story, and he would be until the very end.
Hillary's a woman, and the media need to start making this president look good.
Poopity scoop. Scoop baby. Poop the scoop the poop. Poopity scoop.
Hey, Jim, you want to add anything?
Add? I got a couple subtractions out.
Alec Baldwin's Trump impression began as a comedy sketch, but it ended up leaving a permanent imprint on political satire. SNL had always taken jabs at presidents, from Chevy Chase's clumsy Gerald Ford to Will Ferrell's dim-witted George W. Bush. But Baldwin's Trump was something else entirely. It wasn't just a character, it became a cultural event. Every Saturday night, millions tuned in, not just for laughs, but to see how Baldwin would tackle the latest headline. Even after Baldwin stepped away, SNL kept the tradition alive, continuing to parody political figures and showing that satire was more than just entertainment. It was a way to process reality. It reminded people that comedy has always been one of the strongest tools against power, exposing the ridiculousness that can sometimes hide behind authority. But Baldwin's Trump wasn't just funny, it shaped how people saw the real Trump. His exaggerated voice, pursed lips, and chaotic rambling became so iconic that some Americans couldn't hear a real Trump speech without picturing Baldwin. That's the power of parody. It doesn't just mock, it influences. Love it or hate it, Baldwin's Trump became part of history. It wasn't just another impression, it was a defining image of an era. If you enjoyed, leave a like and subscribe. More videos are on screen now.